all you hear is the grind it out, struggle, put in the 20 hours a day type mentality.
It's easier to be busy, isn't it? And it's less easy to be effective. This type of leadership, I think there's so much value in it. The great thing about this, in my opinion, is that you don't have to wait to start. It's just a matter of choice, isn't it?
Hey everyone, welcome to the Powerful Man Show. I am your co-host, Doug Holt, and with me is the founder of The Powerful Man, Tim Matthews. Tim, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Doug. I'm doing very well. I'm excited to get this first show on the road.
Absolutely. So where are you in the world right now? I know you're a globe traveler. Where are you?
Right now, I am in Leeds. Born and bred in Leeds, hometown. A gorgeous little office out in the countryside.
Awesome. Well, so today, and the reason we started this show, and since this is our first pilot episode, getting it out there, is The Powerful Man has been around for a number of years, helping men all over the world. And so we wanted to bring this show together to answer some of the most common questions. And so, Tim, one of the biggest questions that we get when it comes around men stepping into their power is really talking about the idea of working in your zone of genius, right? Or that idea that, you know, working and doing those things that not only fill you up, but also provide the most value. You know, what do you say to a man who talks about just being drained and not really wanting to, you know, do the tasks at hand in their business? What would you say to them?
Yeah, great question. And it's a really interesting point at which we kind of get those questions too, because they're so driven to achieve in their professional life, yet at the same time, they feel quite drained and they're starting to get a lot of resentment towards the business for what it's costing them in their personal life. So the first thing that I would say to them is it's really around acceptance, to be honest. And I was having this discussion with a successful businessman yesterday, and he's so used to just taking the bull by the horns and getting shit done and, you know, plowing through things that sometimes he simply forgets to delegate. Or, quite different, is it's just how he sees himself, how he sees himself in the role that he plays as an entrepreneur. You know, sometimes these guys have gone through quite a quick transition. They've achieved success professionally through sheer brute force, to be honest, and that's no disrespect to them. But when we kind of get this question, we start talking about this topic, like you said, Doug, they are pretty burnt out and it's coming at the cost of a lot of things in a lot of other areas of their life. Quite predominantly, it's the family, to be honest. So the first thing that we start to dive into is, okay, well, what is a drain on you? So everything that you engage in your life, let's say people, places, and projects, they're going to fall into two categories. They either charge you up or drain you down. So this is where, in my opinion, you get to consider yourself like a battery. You know, what charges you up and what drains you down. And at the same time as looking at this, we get them to write a list of everything that they are currently doing in their company, every task that they're doing. And then we get them to categorize these tasks into a zone of incompetence, a zone of competence, a zone of excellence, and zone of genius. And we start to analyze, okay, what is really going on? You know, how are you showing up in your company? And what percentage are you actually in your zone of genius? Now, at this point, they usually start to become aware of what their zone of genius is. Sometimes they don't know. And, you know, that's fine. You don't know what you don't know. And we start to, you know, go with the guideline of, okay, what fills you up the most? What activities do you just get absolutely lost in? And once they start to identify what their zone is, and more importantly, Doug, you know, what the company requires them to do in order for the company, well, not only the company to succeed, but the clients to succeed and the world to succeed. So creating a win-win-win situation. So it's no longer about them. You know, it's quite a shift in how they see themselves as an entrepreneur and how they see the world, to be honest. And instead of making it about them, it starts to become about the company and about the mission and how they then fit into that. And once you start to take this, well, do this analysis effectively, it really starts to put them in an informed position on what gets to change, where they get to effectively delegate And maybe where they get to introduce some new roles into the company because, maybe some of the tasks they've been doing don't need to be done anymore. It's a case of eliminating, automating, or delegating. So it's a really exciting point in the conversation when we get to this because they can really start to see the light and that whole aspect of feeling drained from just hustling, essentially, they can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely. And well said. And I think for a lot of the men, a lot of this can come down to, especially with men that are playing at a high level, and you said it very well with eliminate, automate, delegate, or vice versa, right? Is actually having that control issue of letting go to their team and trusting that they can actually get things done and delegating effectively.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? The whole aspect of letting go of control, recently we had another successful businessman on one of the initial calls with us in the activation method. And, this guy has got a thriving restaurant chain. He's got restaurants all over the west coast of the US. He's got a hotel. He's got some other businesses. And, Doug, he said at one point in the conversation, he just broke down and started crying. And it was a very humbling moment. I know that we have a lot of men that tend to go through that kind of process with us, but this really humbled me for various reasons. And anyway, he said, "Do you know what, Tim? The reason why I create so much work for myself is because I'm afraid to be alone." And it doesn't mean that in a sense of he's afraid to be on his own, but he's afraid that, okay, fuck, I've created this space in my life. Now what? At that point, he's then left with himself and his own thoughts, his own emotions, and it's no longer masked in busyness. Sometimes the whole control issue, sometimes it comes out of in my opinion, it comes out of the desire to avoid what's really there for you. Sometimes it comes out of the fact that you don't actually know what your zone is, and they're just so used to hustling and grabbing the bull by the horns and running and going with it that the pace of life that they are living with doesn't facilitate them to actually reflect and review and adjust to then actually be in their zone. And then finally, they're just not used to doing what they love to do. You and I have been able to operate in our zones of genius, which, by no means are we perfect, but we operate in there, a huge proportion of the time, and we're constantly sharpening the sword to be in that place, aren't we? And part of that has been really prioritizing your needs. Like one thing that you speak about, which, for those of you that are listening, Doug has a family. I don't have children yet. I'm not married yet. But, Doug is somebody that I massively aspire to be like when I do have a family, because of the lifestyle and the freedom that he's created in his lifestyle to be there with his family. Now, one thing that you speak about a lot is the opportunity cost of you doing something that then takes you away from your family. Now, that you're taking that approach, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's you putting your needs first. And for a lot of the time, for a lot of the men that we've worked with, they've got so used to sacrificing their needs and putting their needs last and just putting everything into work because that's the safe place. That's a place where they get the significance, they can prove, they get the acknowledgement, everything. It's a safe space, it's a comfortable place. But everything else around that, their needs have been really sacrificed, especially having fun. Like, we ask a question to the guys when they come into the activation method, when was the last time you laughed so hard you cried? Wow. And for a lot of them, they really don't know, and it's a real big wake-up call for them at that point. So, it's just, again, the whole factor of just putting their needs last then means by default that they want to be in control because they don't have any other choice. It's either control or nothing, and they used to be busy. So what are they going to do?
Well, yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think for a lot of these men, and I know I can speak for myself and my own experience when I started one of my first companies in my early 20s, I'm in my 40s now, was hustle is what got me there, right? Used hustle and energy and digging in, partially for a mask to cover up, but what I didn't know, right? I didn't have the answers to build a business. I didn't know what I was doing, and hustle allowed me to make up for a lot of my mistakes. And as I matured in both my maturity level in age, but also my maturity level on my journey, I started to still rely on that crutch of hustle and trying to really push forward and get things done. And what it went from serving me to quickly not serving me and using it as something almost like an addiction. Right? And I think most business owners can relate to this, is you're busy being busy rather than busy doing what you want to do. And until you make that shift, as you pointed out, is making that shift to being in your zone of genius and really doing what you want to do with your business and what allows you to move the needle, not only for your business and yourself, but also gives back most to the world, right? Really gives the most benefit and value. You're really holding yourself and everybody else around you back. And it took me, a lot longer than most people to realize that, and then step into an area where I am only working, roughly 2 days a week and able to spend that time with my family and go for walks and do those things, because I'm able to release all those things that aren't in my zone of genius and trust that I put the right people in place so that they can take that and run with it. And that allows them a growth potential as well.
Hey guys, I wanted to interrupt this episode because I wanted to talk to you about how almost 300 men are already taking control of their lives. They're 4Xing their business revenues, and they're having more connected, intimate sex using the activation method, all without sacrificing their relationships or their health. Now, this is only an 11-minute case study we put together just based on all the feedback we've gotten from you listeners. To get the case study, all you have to do is go over to thepowerfulman.com/11. So that's thepowerfulman.com/11. And you can get that case study right now. It's short, it's right to the point, and it's going to give you action.
Type everything. But if he tries to be everything and play every position, his energy is spread so thin that the position of left back, it doesn't fulfill any position. And what will happen is the team will suffer and he'll get brought off the pitch. They'll be substituted. Now, the whole analogy, point of you being able to operate in your zone of genius, and myself and the listeners, is it's not a selfish thing. It's not a how to describe this? It's not an esoteric thing, and it's an actual fundamental, in my opinion, because the energetic cost of you operating out of your zone. So I'm going to use myself an example. When I used to operate out of my zone, I would be doing tasks in the Powerful Man and in my previous business that were in my zone of competence and in my zone of excellence, not my zone of genius. So yeah, sure, I could do those tasks and I could do them well, or I could do them excellent, but they would drain me. I would just feel, I'd feel frustrated. And then at the end of my working day, I'd leave the office and I'd go home to be with Amelia, and I'd feel drained. And I'd be too exhausted to hold a conversation, let alone think about having sex with her. And she'd be there really excited, wanting to tell me about her day. And I just couldn't be present with her. And then she'd be saying, okay, you're not even listening to me. It's pointless. And then I'd feel guilty, and then I'd get annoyed at myself because I knew she was right, but I didn't want to admit that to her. So then I'd go on the attack and be like, no, I am. And then we'd get in an argument. And then what'd happen is, we'd go to bed and it'd be a little bit frosty, and we'd wake up in the morning. I'd leave before she woke up, and it then affects my productivity for the following day. Sure, I still got things done the next day. We still made progress the next day. But, we speak a lot about there being one destination and two journeys. You can arrive at that destination beaten, battered, and bruised, or you can arrive there with a smile on your face. Either way, you're still going to get there. But for me, because, I was then showing up the following day, every day was then more of a struggle, and it was harder. And it was starting to cost me a lot for operating out of my zone of genius. So it becomes really important that you're able to, it's kind of like being selfish in the most ethical way, because by you saying no and operating in your zone of genius and doing what only you can do for the company and doing what lights you up the most, everybody's going to benefit. Everybody, not only in the company and the customers in the world, but everybody in your personal life as well. And it is so, so key, in my opinion and in my experience. We've worked with hundreds of men by this point, haven't we? And it is so key for there to be consistency in your personal life, in you knowing your needs there and sticking to your needs there, because that then fuels what you then do in your professional life. It's very difficult for you to be in your zone of genius and knowing what your needs are and sticking to them professionally if behind closed doors you're going home. And I'm going to tell another quick story here. I've told a lot this episode already, but
it's gold though. It's gold. Keep going.
Another story is, for example, Amelia and I. So I'd get home in an evening and I'd want to have time with her. One thing I found her always asking me is, "What's for dinner?" And I'd be like, "Oh, I don't have a passion for cooking. I don't enjoy cooking." But it was my. It
and this is your girlfriend, for those that don't know her, by the way.
Yeah. It somehow became my task to do the evening cooking. Anyway, because it wasn't in my zone of genius, it was probably in my zone of incompetence. I'd do it anyway, but it just felt like a drain. So what that then meant is, after I'd cooked and we'd had dinner, it then affected the quality of time I could spend with her. So what did I do? And then, if you think about automate, eliminate, or delegate, we then found a company that could prepare our meals for us. They could do 10 meals for like £40, like £4 a meal, good ingredients, healthy, everything. It was amazing. Now, the ROI on that £40, financially, the ROI, if I'm then able to have better time with Amelia on an evening, be more connected, more relaxed, have sex, sleep well, I'm going to go into business the next day feeling more energized, more refreshed, and excited about the day. The emotional ROI is that obviously I'm more connected with Amelia. We're having a great relationship. We're laughing. We're having fun. We're connected. And the spiritual ROI is that I'm more in my zone, so life feels easier. But I think, and I'm not going to go into a totally another point here because it could do, but, for me anyway, growing up, I really believed that it being hard was a positive thing. The harder it was and the more I could tolerate, the more it made me a man. And I struggled for a long time to embrace easy. Yeah. And when you operate in your zone, that's when life becomes easy and it kind of feels like you're cheating. Like you working 2 days a week and you've got multiple companies and you live in an amazing lifestyle. So I imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, I'll ask you the question. When you first made that shift, Doug, did you struggle with that? Did you start to feel like you were lazy or that you were cheating?
Oh, completely. I had, being in the space of coaching for so long, I had to work around my own issues. You and I have had conversations about this in depth. Is you're so used to that routine, and I had so much pride, Tim, and I would always tell people like, I can pull myself up by my own bootstraps. That kind of mentality of digging in, and I'm tough, I'm strong. If I have to work 15 hours a day every day, no problem, I can do it. And then all of a sudden, when you start taking time off, you feel that guilt, right? It's that conversation in the back of the head that's saying, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. And it took me a while to get over those aspects and really look at the results. And you start going, as you and I do, and we talk about this offline a lot, is outcomes are what matter, not just production. You're not a cog in an assembly line. You're actually looking at these outcomes that you want to achieve. And your outcomes are different than my outcomes, and mine are going to be different than the person listening to this. We all have different journeys that we're on. And I think what's really interesting to dovetail and to continue off what you said, which is, you said a lot that I want to bring up. And thank you for calling it soccer, by the way, for us in the States. I appreciate that. But one of the key aspects, I think, of something that you said is there's not a lot of people talking about it being easy, right? All you hear is the grind it out, struggle, put in the 20 hours a day type mentality. And I think that message is being, broadcast so often today for two reasons. One is it's very marketable and it's sellable, right? Because anybody can just work. That's just easy, right? It's just a time thing. It's very hard for somebody to go deep and do interpersonal work like you teach. It's just, you have to step up to do that. And the second reason is I think people talk about this because it gives them validation for what they're doing, right? It's kind of like that idea of if you decide, hey, look, I'm not drinking, I'm going to go out with my buddies. And you always have that one guy who's like, oh, come on. And he buys you drinks and he's really trying to pressure you in to drinking with him. And the reason he does that is because he wants to feel better about his actions and what he's doing. And I think that concept that you teach, the ease and flow, and like you said, there's two paths to the same destination. Do you want to get there beat up or do you want to get there, with a smile on your face? That's very rarely talked about. And you only see that talked about when you really look at interviews from somebody like a Warren Buffett or somebody who's truly been successful, but doesn't teach the path itself like you do.
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate that, and I receive it. Getting compared to Warren Buffett, that's the first time. But I totally agree. Do you know, it's easy to be busy, isn't it? It's easy to be busy, and it's less easy to be effective as a leader first and foremost. But this type of leadership, I think there's so much value in it, in being able to first of all identify what your zone is. Second of all, delegate effectively and lead really well with a clear vision and communicate that in a way that you inspires the people within your organization. And thirdly, translate that throughout your personal life as well. Because the great thing about this, in my opinion, is that you don't have to wait to start. This can be started at any level that within a company, within the company's journey and growth. It's just a matter of choice, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And I want to just go back real quick to frame what is opportunity cost, right? And I think a lot of people may not know exactly, what you and I are talking about when we say that. And there's a couple different ways to look at it, but even from a business standpoint, it's, what is the cost of what you're not doing, right? So if I'm here, we're doing this podcast, and our goal here is really to give back to men around the world. And I look at this through a lens of, spending this time, even though the podcast might be shorter, there is production, et cetera. That's an hour I could be hanging out with my child, or an hour I could be getting paid for consulting, and so what is that price tag? And then once you start looking at life through that lens, I think it really helps you be clear on your duties and what you really should be doing. And that opportunity cost is so important. And so in closing, I want to get your remarks, Tim, on how to kind of summarize this, but I also want to emphasize to all the men listening, and women too, but men in particular that are listening to this, if you think about opportunity costs and what you're doing in life, if you just take what's been brought up here in this conversation and you look across it monetarily, right? If you're in the hustle zone and you're not in your zone of genius, and Tim gave you some exercises directly that you could do today to identify what that is, taking advantage of that, my guess based on the men that we've worked with and talked to is right there, there's tens of thousands of dollars in just value based on that opportunity cost. And that's a lot of money you're going to be saving just simply doing this exercise. Now, if you're motivated by other things like spending time with your family, relationships, your health, then it's even more, right? It doesn't have to be monetarily, but just to bring it down to brass tacks, I think a lot of men miss that and really miss, kind of that, Cat Stevens' Cats in the Cradle, that song where he talks about, the dad never has time for his son. when you're sitting back in your rocking chair, looking back at your life, what is the most important thing to you? And so, Tim, I want you to wrap it up. I just want to make sure the men that are listening to this really understand the value that you gave with that exercise, and that you just breeze past it because you do this so often in helping people. I want to make sure that they go back, rewind this, listen to it again, and actually do the work and do the exercise that you gave them, because it is so powerful. So why don't you summarize real quickly before we end here, summarize what would you say right now if you had kind of just a couple minutes to talk to a man who's sitting there and saying, hey, look, I just feel drained. I'm not in my zone. What should I look at?
What should I look at? First of all, remember you've always got a choice. Second of all, remember why you got into this in the first place. Why did you start your business? I'm sure it wasn't so that you could work all day, every day. I'm sure it wasn't so that you could go home and be drained and have those that matter the most to you get the least of you. And third of all, I'd say go back and do what I have just invited you to do. And start there. Just start there. Just the first step is always becoming aware of what's going on. The second step is then always, accepting it. And then the third is allowing something new and different. So that's what you get to do, in my opinion.
Awesome. All right, Tim, I think that's a wrap for this episode. Guys, thank you so much for being with us, and we'll see you again.